haere mai ki Whangarei District for Thursday the 23rd of September. Councillor Murphy is going to open our meeting with Kakia.
Kia tau ngā manaakitanga a te mea ngaro, ki runga ki tina o tātou. Kia mahia te hua mā kihikihi, kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori. Kia tūturu, ka whakamaua, kia tina, hui e, tae ki e. Let the strength and life force of our ancestors be with each and every one of us, freeing our path from obstruction, so that our words, spiritual power, love and language are upheld, permanently fixed, established and understood, forward together.
Councillor Murphy. Councillors, a reminder for every item, if there are any items on the agenda for which you have an interest, please note those at the beginning of the item. We have apologies today from Councillor Martin. Everybody else is present. Can I remember that his apologies be received? Councillor Innes and Councillor Hulse. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Just some housekeeping matters, councillors. We do have a member of the media present with us today. We are live streaming this council meeting, and there may well be a photographer who comes in at some point through the meeting. As chair of the meeting, I will not be wearing my mask. I do have it, but I just need to be able to be seen and heard. I acknowledge that the majority of councillors are wearing their masks. Thank you. When you are speaking, I would ask that you remove it. And when we do have the public forum and the police report, once there are no other members of the public present, it's optional for you to decide how you choose to wear your mask or not, because we're in the presence of our colleagues and staff. So we do have the public forum, and I see, I was going to call her councillor, Robin Leffering had indicated that she was running late, but she is present here, so we'll move straight to our public forum. A very warm welcome to you, Robin. Please come forward to the area here. And I can just let you know that we have read the pre-circulated information that you've provided for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. I'm here again as the chair of the Positive Advisory Group. And we're keen to encourage and support council to address the needs of the ageing population into the future. It's very important, and you've got figures in front of you, I know, illustrating just how many of us is going to be. We're delighted that the housing needs of older people are addressed in the long-term plan, and say thank you for listening, and more than listening, hearing what we were saying. We look forward to giving every support to any further development of policies, strategies, etc. to progress these developments. Today we would ask councillors to support the growing need for older people activity centres. We see these as belonging under the budgets for new sports fields. We tried to have these included in the alterations to the children's playground in the town basin. We tried to poke into the new town basin park. And we're still trying to poke into the new children's playground going on Pohi Island. But we need help. We ask that the council develops a policy along the lines of, when creating new children's playgrounds or refurbishing existing ones, that a similar activities area alongside is included for older adults. And we had some examples on video to illustrate what these can be. Most people don't know what on earth that kind of equipment is for older people. So we've got a couple of videos that Caroline, I think, is on top of to show you what the equipment is.
Sorry, Councillor I haven't received them.
No, not working?
I haven't received them.
Oh, apologies. I'm sure that when they are received, we'll make sure they're distributed so we can have a look at those.
Okay, that'd be great. It's very low level, you know, it's not bars that they swing on, can you imagine? 85 on a bar. So it's very low level equipment, quite simple. Some of it is rope steps that make them balance, for example. Some of them are quite easy, just doing sort of arm movements with equipment. Mostly low level, and just a few are associated with a children's playground, because often the grandparents that take the children there. So they wouldn't even be distracted while they're doing something simple on something like this and watching their grandchildren next door. So, but it needs, as I say, direction from council to the staff to pick up on it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Robin. And thank you again for the work that you're doing with the Positive Ageing Advisory Group.
Can I just say one more thing? This year our project has been to initiate what we're calling the Silver Project. It's Celebrate Age and Let's Engage. And it's happening in 3 days over November. It is a festival where we are not having exhibitions and forum or anything like that. It is connecting people who are potentially isolated, lonely, up to existing organisations that we have in the district. So we've got 30 sessions over 3 days coming out in a substantial program. And we're going to need you, when they're there, please encourage anybody you know to come in and take part. So they might want to learn how to play indoor bowls, for example. So there'll be a session, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock on Thursday, come and learn how to play indoor bowls. So, called our Silver Festival. I hope it's going to be a great success. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Good plug for that. Councillors, any questions for Robin? Would you mind, we have a question from Councillor Connor. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. I'll just make a mention. It was sent out in the email, the information that we received, so maybe we'll see the videos on here. So with what you're asking for with the adult playgrounds, which I mean, I've loved to play on myself. Are you thinking more along, just obviously it's kind of a moving forward. Would you like to see individual ones added to existing playgrounds or a new playground itself per se? Both.
That's why I said we'd hoped we might have got connected to the refurbishment in the town basin. It's a bit of a squeeze in space, I guess, so we missed out. And then we thought for the town basin park, but that's a beautifully designed park, and there wasn't room for us in there. But there will be in future. I think you're building a new one at Kohi Island. But also, when you're refurbishing others, it would be great to consider putting these alongside.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Robin. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Councillors, item 5.1 is our police report. Area Commander Martin Ruth is not here yet, so I will continue on through the agenda, but when he does arrive, I will bring that item into the agenda then. So item 6.1, page 6 of our agenda, was the minutes of our meeting held on the 26th of August, including the confidential minutes. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that they are true and correct record of proceedings at the meeting? Councillor Peters is moving and Councillor Murphy is seconding. Any corrections or amendments? Yes, it's seconding. If not, I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Item 6.2, the minutes of our meeting held on the 31st of August. Do I have a mover that there are true correct records? Councillor Conch is moving and Councillor Cutforth is seconding. Any corrections or amendments required for those minutes? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Item 6.3, the minutes from our meeting held on the 7th of September, and there was a confidential portion of that meeting, so if I can simply move that the minutes are correct, including confidential. Councillor Reid is moving that. Councillor Connaught is seconding. Any corrections or amendments to those minutes?
Just a comment, I'm disappointed at the outcome change in the vote.
This is about whether or not the minutes are true and correct.
I'm still raising
I'll put
this
that
issue.
motion. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Brings us to item 7.1, page 34 of our agenda, the Whangarei District Growth Strategy. Recommendations on page 34. Thank you to our fabulous staff members who are coming forward. Andrew and Tony.
Through Chair, just apologies on behalf of Whangarei who can't be here today. This document, you could be well familiar with it before you a number of times over the last 2 years. We've received submissions from over 1,300 of our community about it. It's a really important document as many, but it sets out some certainty for what we're looking for in the district. It also recognises what's been pretty obvious during the development of this document, things change very fast. So having this document as a start point is a great way to fuck up everything back up very high, and what's happening long-term planning and recent plans and all that spatial planning. I know nothing about this at all, but Hamish,
You sound very knowledgeable for someone who knows nothing. Thank you, Tony, for that introduction. So before I ask for somebody to move the recommendations, Inju and Hamish, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Just before we move forward, I just want to acknowledge the work in which our former manager, Tony Gordon, has put into this mahi. This piece of work wouldn't be this strong without his contributions. I know he's watching today, so kia ora.
Well said, and we absolutely endorse those comments. Thank you. So, councillors, we do have the recommendation on page 34. I'm very proud to move those recommendations, and Councillor Peters is quick to put a hand up to second. As has been outlined by Tony, this is actually a very, very important document that we are to adopt. We have, you'll recall, or some of you will, and many of you won't actually, the Whangarei District Growth Strategy, the 3050 documents that have been sitting on my shelves for quite some time. You can see they're quite big tomes. There is the strategy itself and the implementation plan. Those documents were amazing, and I encourage you to look at them. They're very thorough in the description of parts of our district and the growth that was planned for those areas and the way we were going to manage those. This was adopted back when Stan Seminoff was mayor. What year was it? Help me out here.
2009. 2010.
So it was definitely time for a refresh.
That's a really good question.
But the point is that these documents still exist, and we absolutely, the information that's come within it is still of value, particularly the photographs and things like that. So this is a 2021 version of the growth strategy, and still maintaining that the word sustainable futures, because I think that's a really important aspect of the whole document. I'll draw your attention to page 18 of the document. So this the scope of the strategy, and it's very clear what the plan will do and what the plan will not do. I think it's important that we acknowledge that the list of things that the plan does do is long, and the list of things that the plan doesn't do is shorter, but it is important to acknowledge that it won't be addressing the detailed operational matters or management of specific assets. It doesn't provide detailed design of projects or specific location of future projects in detail, because it is an overarching document. It doesn't change land use or put rules in place for new development, and it doesn't identify all options and assess the feasibility of each possibility, because we need to keep that flexibility open for the implementation of the plans that Tony was speaking about before. All of the things that build the building blocks, this is the overarching growth strategy. So it does continue the strategic direction of the previous growth strategy, Sustainable Futures 3050. It works towards central government requirements in the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, which is a big development since that one was written. It aligns planning with infrastructure programs, our LTP and activity assets management plans, and it provides a level of certainty for infrastructure providers, communities and developers to guide future investment in our district. It also provides strategic direction for future decision making, so we know that future councils will take this into account. And it promotes an interdisciplinary and collaborative approach across council with central government as well as our community and hapu partners. It will also be flexible so that we can respond to new challenges, those unknown things that we won't know. So it shows a tremendous amount of thinking into where growth will happen, how our transportation strategies fit into it, It also talks of projects for the future to focus on, including the dry dock, Northport, and these drivers to support prosperity for our district. There's, the document covers everything, including where new housing developments will happen, where our commercial focus will be, and how they all interlink, and gives that future focus. So it is a credit to the team who have worked so hard to get it to this point. Credit to our community for their feedback on that. 1,300 submissions is a significant number of people who have engaged in this process and guided and shaped the final document. So today is a big day to adopt our Whangarei growth strategy, and looking at the recommendations, it notes that it'll be also be reviewed every 3 years. I think that's an important aspect of it, given the older document was not refreshed. This one, the intention is that each council will have the opportunity to address the changes that have happened since. It's also noting that staff will continue to monitor our population and development statistics and report these through to council annually, and we're authorising the chief executive to find those spelling mistakes that identify. So, over to you for debate. Councillor Peters.
I really enjoyed reading this. I like the ability to see an overall how we're going to address problems right now and into the future. So I think that the role of the council is really encapsulated in this document. What we should be doing is not arguing over the little bits and bobs, but looking at the overall future strategy, and that's our role. So that, for me, it's really exciting seeing this this put together so well and addressing those issues that I've come to see more in depth since I've been here at the council. Things that before I came in, I thought, these are things that really need to be addressed, and they are covered in a forward look. We need to be looking 30 years as well as right now into the future. Thank you. Thank you very much for your work. I was really excited to read it.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the report, Brian, and I echo all the words of admiration. One thing that I sort of occurs to me, the Waipu Ruakaka area is a lot of growth going on out there. And can you sort of tell me that we have a district plan which allows the growth, we've got a growth strategy which is talking about growth. Are we happy that the two line up and that there is the ability to review the district plan to match the growth and do a growth strategy?
Through the chair, when it comes to, I'll focus on the Ruakaka area first. There are a range of uncertainties with the Ruakaka area when we take into consideration central government's position around the future investment into the four-lane, as we know that was recently pulled out. And then we've got other drivers as well, such as Northport and the future opportunities with the dry dock. So what that entails is that there are uncertainties. However, we've got other tools that we can use, not only with the district plan, but we've also got the Ruakaka structure plan, which sets out that specific 30-year vision for where the Ruakaka area is looking to move forward.
Thank you. So what you're saying is you're happy there's a flexibility to accommodate growth through the Ruakaka plan, the things like the placemaking place, that they can go back and have an impact on the district plan, which will then allow the growth to happen. You're happy with that flexibility?
Yes.
acknowledge that the growth strategy sets the strategic direction for the next 20, 30 years, and the district plan is for that kind of 10-year period, so acknowledging that we're just coming through with the urban services plan change. But this piece of work also acknowledges the placemaking plans, which are those area specific that we want to look at from a community perspective, what's happening with growth and planning for that. And this project also alludes to an action which is the Northland to Auckland Corridor Plan. So we really need to work together with our community, Hapu, iwi, and central government partners to really understand growth and unlock it. So that's a significant piece of work that's also in the pipeline that can investigate that specific area in a coordinated way.
Okay, thank you. If I may, like I say, great, it's all great work and it's the complex, one's a strategy, one's the operational, putting it into practice, isn't it? And I guess for those people who look around and say, for instance, the subdivisions in Waitu have filled out where we're going to go next, what does the district plan allow? And can it accommodate the sort of growth and the ideas that may come forth from the upcoming placemaking plan, that we can then actually, without having to wait another for the next review of the district plan, come in and sort of accommodate in a way that fits in. So if you're happy, that's great.
I think through the chair, another tool that we also have to do with regards to our legislative requirements for the National Policy Statement on Urban Development is the assessment of the housing and business capacities assessment that we just undertook. And we're also in the next year, which is an action of the growth strategy, we need to undertake that future development strategy as well, which will also complement this piece of work. So there's more investigation analysis that will take place in the coming future, acknowledging the RMA reforms and other pieces of work that will hopefully work together.
Complicated, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Innes?
Thank you, Worship. Just picking up on Councillor Cooper's point there, complicated. Well, I found reading the document provided a level of good explanation, easy to understand, and really started to put together a number of components. But I'd go back and really state that the Council led in terms of the 30-50 sustainable future, and that positioned us really well in terms of the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. And with Council leading in this area, I think that it's one that it enables us to look at the organisation, work across the organisation in terms of going forward, so everybody's on the same page. But I think in terms of going forward on this growth strategy, picking up, really identifying those opportunities to work with central government in partnership, starting to look at future services and looking at our growth, what can we get as a district in relation to central government. And that relationship going forward is going to become increasingly important as we look at the reform of local government that's going on. So I see that that aspect of it can't be underestimated, and that's really when we look at the Strategic Planning Act that's coming out of the reform, it's very much starting to formalise that in terms of spatial planning, but for communities, placemaking is absolutely critical. It's one whereabouts there will be involvement, and I know that as we look at the council going forward and we look at election at large in terms of ward, placemaking is going to place a far more importance on community and being able to shape really in terms of their immediate place in terms of their aspirations. So it's trying to tie all those bits together. It provides a framework, it looks at sustainability, and every 3 years it's reviewed. And I think with the change that we're experiencing at the moment, for example out of COVID, the growth that we've got, it's really important for that to happen. But the relationships that are created through this document and through this strategy will be one that will sustain the future of Whangarei District and its relationship with central government. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Councillor Coparillo?
Madam Chair, I actually have a few questions, if you don't mind. Firstly, the data that's been created into this growth strategy, is it relating to Stats New Zealand?
So, through the chair, are you referring to population growth?
Yes.
So it's a combination of Stats NZ data, but also other council data which has been taken into consideration, such as building consents, resource consents, so forth.
With the amount of people who are leaving Auckland and coming to Whangarei because of the COVID situation and actually wanting coastal properties, how come I'm not seeing that on this data at all?
Through the chair, can you please elaborate on that?
As of this morning, I've been told of at least a dozen people who are trying to evacuate from Auckland, and they are specifically asking for rural coastal properties, ideally in the Councillor Innes's area, which have beach fronts and things like that. So they're specifically asking for this type of environment. And that's just a dozen people, as of this morning, who are specifically asking for it, and there is hundreds of others.
So through the chair, we have developed a growth model, and those forecasting population numbers are used to inform all our pieces of work, whether it's the growth strategy, infrastructure planning, and also our long-term plan processes. And acknowledging that those statistics are fluctuating and changing, we have to refresh and acknowledge that some of those statistics are a standpoint in time. And then as new data and new statistics become available, we refresh it. Our team do look at those population forecasts closely, but they are forecasts with assumptions based. And so we have, in previous briefings, spoken clearly to this point, and we believe that we are quite well placed with regards to the future growth and population projections within the strategy, acknowledging that it's still a living document, and as statistics or new data becomes available, we will try to report that through and inform all our planning and infrastructure and business operations and decisions.
And Your Worship, I'm not denying the amount of work that the staff have done. I'm not going there. I'm just highlighting that there are issues here which I'm just raising. For example, we're dated here 2019 for a lot of stats. It's now 2021. So is the document already too old?
2018.
No, 2019, the sale value of the property sales, and I can tell you now at the moment in Kamo, the average property sale is around about $900,000. In Tikipanga, it's almost $1 million, and in Morningside, it's up to around about $700,000. So the stats here, dated 2019, is the document already outdated?
I think it's unfair to say that the data that's been quoted in this document should be today's up-to-date. I think it's totally unfair to ask for that to be happening, but I'll refer to it.
Through the chair, one of the things that, one of the learnings, I guess, that we've had over this duration of the strategy is that the environment around us is continuously changing, and that's one of the reasons for why we've got such a regular review process of not only the strategy but also our population projections. When we think of the uncertainties coming around with COVID-19 and Delta, I think that emphasises the importance of just regular monitoring in that space.
Okay, and also, sorry, I do apologise, Your Worship, I did say I have several questions here. In relation to the data that has been provided, you acknowledge that it needs to be updated, but how many government departments will be using this document as a reference tool?
Through the chair, I think that we have been using this work as a conversation piece to place us well, and it is the point of the growth strategy to set the strategic direction, acknowledging that some other government departments also use statistics and their own data sets, and I think moving forward through different work programs and all that sort of thing, we have to be open when it comes to collaborating, and this is the information that we present into other forums. I think it's an ongoing conversation piece with work together with with the community, business sector and government agencies. I think that when we get stuck on a particular number, it kind of defeats the purpose of what the document's trying to do in a way, and that we are, in a sense, trying to refresh and bring new information and statistics as soon as it comes available to us forward with our decision making. But this document is trying to, acknowledge that the Sustainable Futures, which was adopted by Council in 2010, we've done a significant review of that, and with regards to our legislative requirements under the NPS, it really ties together and places us in a better position to respond to that growth and future investment.
And I'm going to change tack a little bit onto a different topic, but all to do with this. In the front section of the document, it refers very specifically to Māori only. So can you tell me why this council would be in favour of supporting a racist document which only focuses on one culture?
Through the chair, can I just ask what page you're referring to?
We deal with, start with page 9, which is around the demographics, which only refers to Māori only. When we go to page 10, we're focusing on Māori only. Page 11, we're focusing on Māori housing only. Why are we dealing with a document which is quite clearly racist?
Through you, Madam Chair. I suppose I'd contest the assertion, but to provide some context, there is a treaty sitting up here, which is part of the guiding document of the Local Government Act and part of our founding, nation's founding document. So we will always do that because of the treaty and other things. There is also an inequity there that needs to be addressed.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair, and Rob, I appreciate the comments on that. However, the document does not refer to other cultures or other races. It refers to Māori only. If we were to abide by the treaty, we would include all cultures in that respect and all aspects in there. This document does not at the beginning. It is quite clearly focusing on one race, which is actually discrimination in relation to race.
Councillor Popolo, your opinion is your opinion. I will leave it at that. Councillor Bennett.
Tough act to follow. First, thanks, Andrew and Hamish, and if Tony Horton is listening, we miss you and we love your work. Thank you for your efforts. And Andrew, congratulations on the efforts you put into the placemaking program, which I think is vital in linking with this sort of stuff. And one of the issues as a council that I think this addresses, but really broadly, and I think we need to delve way deeper really quickly, is the issue of transport connections. And I see all the different subjects go on about improved transport connectivity. And it's easy to talk about, and it's really difficult to do. And it's raising public expectations that we're going to do these things, and I don't see that as a council we are coming to grips with that like we should be. And I think it's something we need to take on board really quickly and work together and really get on top of. For instance, all the subdivisions going on in Tikipunga and Kamo and where all else. And if you come into Whanau every morning, you'll know that there is a major issue. And I see Mr. Ruth here now, he'll probably attest to this. So there's major issues there that we need to address now and not in 1, 2, 5, 10 years' times. And the Manu one goes on about improving state highway connections, and I understand that that's not us particularly as a group, but we are part of that and we're not addressing those situations. And I'm part of the problem. This is what I want to be doing. It includes public transport, which includes things like car parking in town, which is an issue that comes up every day that we're still not addressing. And we need to sit down and we need to address those things and come up with a plan to implement some of this stuff. Because I know when I come in from Tiki every morning and my mate from Manu rings me as he comes down that Manu hill complaining about those things, that these issues need addressing now. We need to be proactive, not reactive. A place like Tauranga was really reactive to these issues, and now there's so much going on there now, they are reacting to it at least. But I hope we can be a bit more proactive and work with you and sort out some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benning. Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Vince, I thought I was going to follow. Vince was such a hard act. One of the difficulties with a document like this is that it can just become one of those doorstops. And one of the difficulties with strategies is that unless they're linked to action and specificity, it can just become a large and painful toe locker. And we discussed that yesterday actually at Audit and Risk in terms of the link we need to have between strategy and operations. So I think you're in a sort of a bit of a no-win, because if you just have a strategic document that doesn't have any stats in it that are current, then you are damned in one sense, and then if you put in any stats, of course they're immediately out of date. So I do sympathise with you in some ways. So I'm really glad to see that it is going to be reviewed every 3 years, and so it does become a bit more of a living document. There's some interesting stats and facts in it, and just in terms of what Councillor Cockerilla was saying, on page 9, what I hadn't realised to the full extent was if you add up the age and sex of Māori and Whangarei District, that chart, I don't know if the chart itself is particularly useful, but if you add up the stats, we've got a Māori population. 51% of 24-year-olds and under male are Māori, and 47% of females. Once you get to 24, the women start outliving the men, which I thought was probably something to encourage actually. But I mean, and it may be possible to actually truncate that into some more sort of chunky information like that. The other thing I wondered was just above that it says that the population of Māori and Whangarei is young, with those between the ages of 5 to 9 being 12.5% male and 11.5% female. And I did wonder what the other 76% of the population, non-binary possibly, yes. So there's some interesting figures in it. And one of the other things I noticed too, that and something that Councillor Innes was talking about yesterday, I think, was if you look on page something or other, 31, it talks about the economy of Whangarei, and it's actually a really diverse economy. In fact, it's one of the more diverse economies of any region or any district in New Zealand. So it says our district is largely reliant on manufacturing, healthcare, social assistance, construction, agriculture, forestry and fishing. It's fairly diverse, really. So I think that's one of the things that is useful for the strategy, because it does show we've got a number of arrows to our bow, if you like. One thing I would have liked the strategy to have done on the next page on education and training, it talks about the level of engagement of 15 to 24-year-olds being higher than the average in New Zealand, and I'm surprised at that figure, and I wonder whether there's a distinction there between Māori young people and non-Māori. But also, so I quite, because that's really the demographic I think that we need to be concerned about, is those that aren't in education or employment or training, and I think it's actually higher than possibly the strategy suggests. The other thing I would have liked the strategy to have done just under that section is it talks about the role of North Tech, but it doesn't talk about the role of a whole bunch of other training providers who are actually picking up a lot of those young people and helping them through to North Tech. And I do want to just pay respect, I guess, to places like People Potential, who've been around for a long time dealing with that group of young people who are, it's absolutely critical when you look at those other demographics, it's critical that this district gets a handle on those young people and help move them through into things like apprenticeships. The other thing I hoped that the strategy might be worth just thinking about is a really handy chart on page 23. Page 21, which answers Councillor Cockerillo's questions about the people moving from Auckland a bit. I think you can see a 39% increase in household income. I think those are those common Aucklanders moving up here. It looks at the growth, which doesn't include Veganis's area, but it does include Ruakaka and places like Tikipunga where I hang out. But that's really interesting. One thing that would be really interesting to see in there too is the household income, because it is different from our GDP per capita figure. it would be good to get a really good handle on what the household income is for Whangarei. But as I said, it's a sort of document where you damn if you do and you damn if you don't, and I think the fact that we're having a 3-year review means it will be something that can be refreshed and will make it a lot more useful than the type of strategic documents that often just sit on shelves. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cutforth. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon.
Through the chair, I just wanted to make it clear with the review period, we also will be reviewing the actions of the growth strategy annually.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting summary document. It kind of sums up all those strategic drivers that we're always talking about, issues that we're facing in our district, housing, biodiversity, transport. And I think over the 2 or 3 years that we reviewed it, I think we did capture those. We've identified what is really important. And I think, like Councillor Benny and Councillor Innes kind of indicated, it's so complicated because it's a paradox. How do you manage growth and also protect our natural capital? It's really, really tricky. There were just a few things that I wanted to pick up on. One, the performance goals on page 5. I think they're really interesting. They do somewhat relate to the action plan, but I'm just wondering, there's no kind of time frame there as far as when we are looking to, is that we want to achieve those within the next 3 years? What's the...
Through the chair, they are more aspirational targets for where council should be looking to target towards. There's no time frames on that, but also with the performance goals that have also been driven by strategic drivers identified from other central government agencies such as Whangarei.
Yeah, that's right, and I thought that. So what my opinion, and this will be something I guess over the next few years and for the next council as well, I think we could have been far more aspirational with those goals. So for example, there we've got a 10% mode share for public transport. And we are, as Councillor Martin was here, he would say we're a rural district and we've got challenges with public transport. But I think when we think about what Councillor Benny was saying, obviously we don't want to, congestion's just getting worse, so I think it's really important that we link those drivers with the performance goals, and maybe we do need to challenge ourselves about being a bit more aspirational as a council, and that's not a challenge for staff, that's a challenge for governance. The other thing, when we look at the action plan, I think it's really good because we know as an organisation we are somewhat limited in our capability. I think it's quite a substantial action plan when you think about the number of staff we have on our teams. What we're actually saying that we'll work on is really good. We can't do everything. There's one kind of gap that I've picked up on, and I feel responsible when we go back and think about all the workshops we had with Tony Horton. So one of the strategic drivers is our valued natural environment. And in our action plan, it does refer to protecting biodiversity in our blue-green network strategy. But one thing I think we really need to be cognizant of is the fact that we do manage nearly 10,000 hectares of public land. So council's responsible for a lot of parks and reserves, and they're so beautiful and they're so special, and they're what make our district, to me, just incredible when you think about, Councillor Hobbs loves them too, this time. And so we do provide quite a lot of budget for community groups to do pest control and predator control. But I think that we didn't really pick up that as kind of a target in our growth strategy, and saying that one of our goals would be to protect and manage and enhance Indigenous biodiversity in our own council reserves. So, for example, in the text, where is there's that section? I'm not sure.
64.
Page 64. Just go to that. it's actually page 66, so we've got a section here on Indigenous biodiversity. So there is some good text there about what our aspirations are, but we don't really refer back to the land that we are responsible for and what we could do to protect and enhance biodiversity on our own land. But anyway, that's just a personal thing. So maybe in the next review, that's something that council might pick up on. But overall, yeah, thank you so much for all the work. It's a massive amount of work, and I'd just like to say I really tautoko everything in there that supports Māori in the Whangarei District. And I look forward to the day when New Zealand history is taught in our schools so that everyone can have a full appreciation and understanding of Te Tiriti or Waitangi and what it means for the future of Aotearoa. Thank you.
Councillor Hulse.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Hamish, and you for your commentary that day on Te Kara area, because I know the members were online and you come across really, really good, so thank you for that. Now, getting down to this document here, it's got some really, really good detail, and you've got to commend all the staff who've done the work, but there's a couple of things that I'd like to offer as a learning experience to a lot of planners and a lot of young staff members. And if Tony's listening, he'd probably understand, because I've talked to him in depth about it, is you've got to be careful about comments that serve an opinion. And so I've got on the page here the Ruakaka construction plan. And we've got to talk everything up as council. We want Northland to go. We've got to make sure we're talking it up. And it's got a comment here, development of this area, this is Ruakaka construction plan, development in this area is not happening as quickly as initially planned. Well, and above that it's got the Ruakaka construction plan was adopted in 2009. Well, actually, the Ruakaka construction plan was adopted in 2000. And I was a commissioner on that. And that stage we actually had a public consultation on the whole lot. Rob Leafing, who was here before, was actually on one of the commissioners along with Councillor Christie and myself. We had a wave of submissions, and we determined to isolate all the commercial land on one side of the peninsula, all the housing on the other side, and et cetera, et cetera. So we should say that plan has been probably the most successful plan in New Zealand. Because since we've had that plan in place, we've actually built the whole port. That port is probably going to be one of the biggest ports in New Zealand. They're coming on the structure plan. We actually built Marsden Cove, Canal, Marina, all that housing. La Pointe Estate, all that housing. All the stuff, and you go down and council actually invested in the plan, and this is what I want to encourage councillors to actually do. If you want to move this forward in a really proactive act, we've got to invest. In the Marsden Point structure plan, the council actually paid for extension of State Highway 15 to the port, but to the Orley front. We did it as a local project road. But now it's been taken over by Waka Kotahi. But we negotiated that way. But it initially came to make this plan work, we invested and paid for that road, which is a good extension. That's about 4.7 kilometres of new road. Only new road we've done for a long, long time. So if you look down, and the other part is, and Councillor Deemy's come on, she's been with that area for a long time now, we've actually, we built the Wilson Dam, got near water for the structure plan, identified it. We invested probably $14 million in the water treatment plant. We spent, $10 million on the Ruakaka South Service System, all because of the structure plan. So I want you people to talk it up, because it is probably one of the best plans in New Zealand. Because if you add all that investment together, it's been pretty superb. So I want to just highlight that what I'd like to see out of this plan is something what Councillor Benny just mentioned before. We know we've got some problems. There's no use having problems and not doing something about it. So I'd like to have someone come back and say, what are the problems identified in this growth plan, and deal with them. We all know Māori Road, the problem of Māori Road should be fixed. How are we going to fix it? It's not a staff problem, it's our problem, it's councillors. We should look at it and identify the problem and sort it out, because we know it's going to get worse. And so that's what I encourage councillors. Things do happen. And, you know, Councillor Deemy and I have been to probably more public meetings than the rest of council put together about the growth of Basel Point. I can assure you we're doing heaps. But it's good stuff, but we end up with a really good product at the end. But thanks very much. But just as young staff members, always remember you've got some old guys looking at it. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs. Any further debate? Councillor Connor.
I just wanted to very firstly say thank you very much to the staff and everybody who had part of to move the Kiri Whangarei into its equitable position opposite the King and Queen and opposite the flag on the main wall. So I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who was a part of that. The very first word, aside from our logo on this document, is sustainability. And it's great to be seeing this as a word covering everything and not just the environmental areas of it. It is everything. It is not just a halo over the environment. With that being said, on page 12, and this is getting a little bit confusing, but I've brought it up in the past in other situations that pristine is no longer possible. Pristine natural environments is no longer possible. So we need to encourage everybody to bring them up to a standard that this world is no longer pristine. There's a few, I'm going very basic with this. I'm not going to be too finicky about the whole thing because it's data, it becomes old the moment you write it down or whatever. There's a few spelling where you've got Untitled, which is kind of conjoined into one word, which makes it a different word. So it just makes you need to edit it out. It's great to see there's a bit of guidance for what's actually happening around the district. It is the coverall. It's not going to be perfect, but at least it's a guide for us to be sustainable on what people are coming in, what impact we are having on the environment, what impact we are having on our roads, and basically everything that this document covers. It's great to have it all in one place. It's fairly easy to read, and it's aspirational. And in the back, I do see that there is an action plan as well to be able to be moved forward. It's fantastic as well that it is going to be revised every 3 years because obviously with the changing environments and the comments we've already heard, they do change. So it's great to see that it will be looked at more frequently than every long term. One little thing that I'd like to pick up on is just a statement in it. It's on page 64, importance to Maori and the natural environment. The last comment, it says, Maori with ancestral ties to our district are kaitiaki, protectors and guardians of the environment, and we need to assist them to fulfill their role as kaitiaki and ourselves as stewards to the environment. We all should be kaitiaki of the environment, not necessarily just them. That, to me, I read that as it puts the onus onto them to be the guardians, and we're kind of the stand back type of people. We're impacting these environments as well. With all due respect to that as well, I understand what it's going for, and I do understand the base context to it, but we all should be kaitiaki as opposed to putting it onto somebody else to do it. Because we are. This is human impact on the land of where we are. Our creations, our changes of lands, alter the flow of what has happened. We get floods where even out, I saw an image out Whangarei Bay, I think it was this morning, where the roads are all flooded. We've put roads in places that shouldn't necessarily be, and it's making sure we're paying heed to those, especially with climate change and what will happen. We have the levels of water shown within the document as well, which is great that it's working with too. So it's always going to change. We'll always learn more, but it's a great start. So thank you very much for all the effort and the implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Any further discussion on that? Councillor Anderson, you've already spoken?
I've already spoken, but I'd just like to make one comment.
You have already spoken. I am sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Councillors, I will take my right of reply when we adopt the growth strategy. I'm really heartened by the discussions that have gone. Oh, Councillor Reid, I'm sorry, I have started my right of reply.
I did have my hand up. He didn't, Councillor.
I do beg your pardon, I didn't see it. But because I have started, I will continue. So the strategic drivers, and they've all actually been touched on, sustained growth and development, successful economy, housing needs, a changing climate, resilient infrastructure aligned with development, transport, our valued natural environment, projects to support prosperity, resilient rural and coastal communities. And I think the fact that all of those strategic drivers have been touched on by various members around in their debate just shows that the focus of this document is appropriate for our district for looking at the growth in a 30-year horizon and ensuring that we are preparing for the changing aspect of our community. So with that, I will put the motion.
Can we take the parts, please? The reason I'm asking is the first one says adopts, whereas all the others are relating to noting.
Councillor Cockrell has asked that we put the items in parts. I'll move each and every, I'll ask for a voting for each of them. So item 1, adopt that Whangarei District Council adopts the Whangarei District Growth Strategy. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against?
Against, recorded please.
Thank you, that's carried. Recommendation that the Whangarei District Council notes the Whangarei Growth Strategy attachment 1 will be reviewed every 3 years in support of the long-term plan. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. 3, notes that staff will continue to monitor population and development statistics and report these through to Council annually. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And 4, authorises the Chief Executive to make any minor amendments to text and graphics of the Whangarei District Growth Strategy as required. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. That brings us, I did see Harry Commander Ruth into the... hey, well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Must feel good.
Thank you.
So we'll move to item 7.2, the Lumsden Bridge replacement professionals. No, we won't. We'll have Harry Commander Ruth. Welcome, Marty. Lovely to get. So this is Councillors, item 5.1, the police report. A very warm welcome to you, Marty.
Thank you, and Morena, worship and councillors. It's been a while since we've been here. Gavin rang me last night and said you need to speak up. Speaking like a little choir voice, so I'll do my best. Probably no news is good news for us. In the COVID space, one of the benefits is crime just drops right off, and it has. It's enabled us to capture a lot of serious crime cases that were underway from before mid-August. We resolved in the vast majority of those, so that's good for us. We've solved a couple of robberies that were troubling us with some repeat offenders. Our vehicle crime youth who were live streaming their exploits, pushing our stolen car epidemic through the roof for us. We've resolved that, touch wood, for now, in the sense that we've got 3 young people, 14, one's in a secure facility, another one's on bail. They're averaging about 35 charges each, so they're probably knocking off 3 cars a day each, and we've managed to stop them through some technology and some good work. In the COVID space, probably our checkpoints has been our focus. No secrets there. We fronted up checkpoints as soon as we could, which was ours at the level 4 lockdown, and maintained those for the first week. Our cousins from Whanau supported us on those. You'll probably hear from your constituents a lot of lifetime habits, lifetime protocols for some people would have been disturbed. I've shopped in Pack and Save for 25 years, and I'm going to go and shop in Pack and Save today. Unfortunately, you can't. But that sort of stuff, we had some, again, most Northlanders and Kiwis growth, it'll be in the high 90s if you were to measure it. The 2%, there was some bizarre stuff worthy of a few TV shows. People trying to get through the checkpoints with the most incredible stories. You have to listen to them. evaluate those. So the results are plain. We've got nothing in our sewage. We've managed to keep the double variant out of Northland. It's been a big effort. 62 staff a day in Whanau, and we're very appreciative of our cousins in Whanau. They've got the ball now on their northern checkpoints, so they've stood up 5. As you know, we're constantly getting people popping up, and that's no disrespect to anyone, but some Kiwis are very resourceful. There was a farmer who was taking money for people travelling across land to get through. Some really incredible stories. People arriving from the middle of the North Island with goose eggs, and it was the biggest thing in the planet's history. Really quite remarkable how people react in level 4. You've seen the figures that were out yesterday in terms of Aucklanders who were able to get through prior to the midnight lockdown. Superintendent Hill's doing a great job pushing that up in terms of we need to do this better if there is a next time, touch wood. Those 6 or 7 hours when it becomes public knowledge, the number of cars and boats on the highway is quite remarkable. At the moment, we've got teams all over Northland doing our rural areas, our visiting Iwi and Hapu, our rural areas who are most unvaccinated, who need a lift, need a hand. We're out there just touching base with them, providing some care packages and bits and pieces, making sure they're okay. And they are focused on getting vaccinated and getting their family vaccinated. Other than that, it's pretty quiet on the crime front. It's one of the benefits of the strain, level 4 lockdown, so I really haven't got much to give you in that space. Other than it's pretty quiet, so Your Worship, if there's any questions, I haven't really got anything more to
Thank you, Marty.
add.
I just wonder if they bought the golden goose with the eggs.
Yeah.
Or should it be KFG?
Yep. No, it was goose eggs with incubators, and it was the second day level 4 from memory. And the goose eggs had to get through and then travel from the central North Island to those quite. It was an interesting conversation. She was a lovely person. So,
You could write it.
that's just what you get.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Marty. Good to hear the crimes down, and I'm reasonably sure it would have been sheep that was taking money. One of the things, there has been a bit of a spate of petty crime out in One Tree Point Road, perhaps as it relates to some of those people you caught. That's my first question.
Yep, so there has been a sporadic, we're getting a lot of our Macedonians, our LTs, we're getting predated upon by our Facebook warriors who are out there, our youth who take great delight in stealing people's cars. Kind of stopped that, but we've got some work to do out there. There's a sporadic, the odd burglary, the odd boat shed, bits and pieces happening. And it's someone who's visited the area hasn't quite cracked their head, but I'm very confident we will. Yeah, absolutely. We're very much aware there's someone there who's visiting, goes quiet for a while and it pops up again. So,
wouldn't want to put back on the sheep farms.
No.
The other thing, I guess, is you mentioned the 62 officers standing up there and they come out of nowhere.
Yep.
Is that been offset by the drop of crime in the lockdown, or were you finding has that been quite difficult?
Well, we have to prioritise everything. Keeping the beast strain out of Northland was our number one priority. It was clear from day one. So we grabbed everyone who could move and stood up Mountain Road, Cove Road and State Island line. That was all Northland staff. We did that for about a week. We had to get some help from our cousins, but I can tell you it just drops like a proverbial bell curve as soon as we get over lockdown. Probably the only people out and about are the meat dealers.
And the dairy farms.
Yeah, in the dairy farms.
Still working, yeah. So sorry, right, carry on, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Benning, Councillor.
So, thanks, Marty. Firstly, can you confirm you're late because of the traffic congestion coming in? Just a just one. So, one of the topics that's come up recently quite a bit is graffiti.
Yes.
So I've noticed, particularly, and I'm interested in your thoughts on that, there's been an increase in graffiti. One of the funding organisations we do is DTAG, and they expire next June. So I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on, we've got to discuss whether we continue that or we flag it. So particularly in the last few months, I've noticed an increase in graffiti. And I'd invite you to comment on your thoughts on DTAG and how we address graffiti.
I guess it's a matter of focus. It's a sporadic visual crime, right down the bottom of the crime spectrum. Probably if you look at our truancy stats, you might see a definite correlation there. So we're trying to work with MOE in terms of boots on the ground and what that funding provides for the Whangarei city. I would be an advocate of keeping what you've got going because it's very visual. It's that kind of signal crime that just is out there for everyone to see. Look, there are a number of programs that youth groups have done from year on year out to try and stop it. I know the other day that some young people apprehended them, they were out cleaning themselves, cleaning stuff off the walls, they spray. There's a number of things we can do. If it's a big ticket item for the council, I need to know that. If you're hearing from your constituents that it's big, so it's not traditionally reported, as you know from your time on the job, people don't bring up and say, I tagged last night. They don't even report it. Our data will be right down and won't reflect perhaps what you're seeing. There are a number of shopkeepers who take advantage of the gear they use, and they stock up and it's going out the door pretty quickly. We can do a lot of prevention work in that space. But I probably need to hear from councillors what their constituents are seeing and hearing. So we're not getting on tagging. It doesn't really feature these days in terms of what's reported. It's kind of stuff that just, from your time, probably the same. They sort of deal with it in their own way.
Yeah, we're really just looking for confirmation that it's not a priority for the police, but you think it's important that, for instance, an organisation like DTAG is out there getting rid of it.
So the short answer is yes. Yeah. We'll do what we can do, but like I said, if it's not reported, and obviously we catch youth groups who are aware of it, I invite you, I've got some data on our truancy over 10 years, and I think you'll see a strong correlation between our truancy figures and tagging over time. It's increasing. But I can tell you it's not that we don't want it to be on our radar, it's not on our radar because people don't report it.
Well, thank you. There is a nice new one down by Undervasa. Your organisation gets a mention, but I can't say what it says.
We get mentioned every day, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marty, Councillor Kenny raised up about the graffiti, but doesn't the police actually have access to the database that the council create, the city safe staff create?
Yeah, so I think the wiki reports that you provide to us gives us some, I'm not disputing the fact that we have. I can tell you in the COVID space, it would have probably been right down the bottom of our work streams. I'm not aware of a specific database, and so I've been sitting in this. It hasn't come up on our radar, if I'm brutally honest, in terms of what's happening around the town, and our resources haven't been directed, if I'm honest, towards a response for, we kind of deal with it as it comes around. we catch them. If it's a big issue for our local communities, then we'll get in their space and do something.
I appreciate that. Last COVID level 4 lockdown, there was a distinct spike in domestic violence.
Yep.
Did you notice that this time?
Absolutely. So you'll all know from your constituents, your people, your personal experience, anxiety levels go up on level 4. Level 3 people get a bit of cabin fever. They, family pressures increase. The short answer, Vince, is yes. Not significant, though, was the amount of violence, the amount of reporting increased a little bit. And I can probably say with some integrity that the amount of violence didn't blow out like we thought it would. So mental health was an issue for us, certainly family violence. But can I say it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be?
And you just touched on my next thing, which was in relation to the well-being of the police. And the present during level 4, they're expected to be out there, they're an essential service. How are they all coping?
Yeah, so we've got a big focus on that. We really looked after them in terms of their welfare, who was capable of standing up, so that people space is very important to us. We didn't put anyone there that was had some issues at home or something like that, where they just purely unable to for a range of reasons. We put some people at home who were at risk ourselves, like we were different, some people working from home. Generally speaking, they got a lot of love. We really concentrate on the welfare side of that, and you'll find that cumulative anxiety within first responders. So everyone kind of gets a break by first responders, and it just keeps going. It's not a break, but you're at least at home with your family. These men and women are up doing the money, every time we get a level 2, level 3, level 4, they don't get a break. So our leave totals are not too bad at the moment. They've spiked a little during the COVID space, but we're getting people off now. So yeah, I'd like to say that the morale is good, the spirit is good. They realise they're working, and their focus comes home when you look into something like the Delta variant. If you don't do your job, people are going to die. So. Probably the relationship between us and Whanau, they thought we were pretty hard on the Aucklanders, if I can say that. we didn't, we turned some people around who thought they had their interests were most important. Some of their excuses were a bit of exploration, didn't quite stack up. And then we kind of simulated them into our culture. Realised that once we told them stories from our past and what makes what's important for everything, they learned that.
And through you, Madam Chair, I do want to throw a big thanks to the police, the work that they do. Your team, Marty, there's a lot of hard work out there, and that's why I did ask about the mental health side of things. I'm quite conscious that Northlanders don't think like Aucklanders. And I'm quite conscious that you actually have to deal with a lot of those issues, and I hope you never have to deal with a situation which happened like in Melbourne.
Yeah. No, we had very few respect people's right to protest and free thinking. That's cool. We didn't have that. We had a small group of people who were focused, and you all probably be aware of that. I got some consultation about some protest action here, but it was
Councillor Golan.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Marty. During lockdown, we had a meeting, a Zoom meeting, and at some stage we have to make a decision about city states. Right. And I know in the past that you have sort of informed us that they're sort of crucial to being your eyes and ears. I really, and I think I mentioned that I really like your guys' input on that decision that we've got to make, but I just sort of want to reiterate with sort of something that you've sort of said before, like would are they really crucial to being your eyes and ears? And if we were to increase the city slave officers, I mean, is that going to be beneficial? And obviously it is, but just would like to hear your opinion on that.
If I can be, again, being brutally honest, the answer is yes. They're professional, they're equipped, their training is sound, they know where the boundaries are. Look at the most recent homicide, the cases before the court, so I'll be pretty generic. They rang it in, they were right there, they called it, it was captured on CCTV, the offenders were tracked through town, we saw where they threw the knife, they discarded their clothing and went in the grocery toilets, I can't hear it 2.5 minutes. It doesn't get any better.
Did they also assist you in the petty crime, like getting us from...
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's just an extreme example. But the work they do and the problems that they see through their experience that they bring to the boil, bring to our attention, we can get in there and above that prevention aspect. Being there, the eyes and ears, I can't sing their praises enough. I really can't. We're very grateful. It's a great partnership. It's good work. We'd love to see them out there.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you for the I've got 2 questions. One, has some of the national training for frontline workers that's been advertised, is some of that going to our people here?
The timing's not quite right for me to give you the good news, but I can tell you that it is good news. But awful. That's really all I can say at this time.
Second question, there's a lag time between when the Prime Minister or whoever says a lockdown and when we actually can stop people moving through the border. I'm aware, especially of some rural communities that get flooded with Aucklanders, and it makes a lot of them really nervous. Is there any way of dealing with that?
So, thank you for raising it. I did allude to that just briefly before, but our superintendent's raising that through his level after our key strategic partners on how we can do that better. Look, I think it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock we got out, the midnight going to level 4. You all know people who were on the highway, the toll, cameras and bits and pieces gave us specific data on how many people were on the roads. They're not stupid, they want it. But we actually went and visited them at some of our rural communities, so the locals were telling us, well, these batches aren't occupied, there's lights on, there's people there, we genuinely can see we're going to meet these people at the dairy tomorrow morning. They're not worried about that often. So, yes, there is a piece of work going on how we can do that better, very high level. I don't know what the answer is, I haven't got it to put before you, Council.
Do you, say if you visited, which you did, these people, do you have the authority to go and tell them to go home?
Absolutely, level 4, it's not their so there's quite a bit of inquiry work. We don't use those powers arbitrarily. We do our homework and don't jump on the ladder of inference because you can, they're quite all-encompassing powers and telling people to go home. We do a bit of inquiry work and there are some people that we did say, starting for the border, you're going home, this is not your home.
I'm really heartened to hear that because that's something that really inside. I really thank you for that work and I Northerners generally thank you for that really difficult work.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Richard. Marty, I definitely don't want to be a policeman. I've seen them out there in the morning and in the rain, and it ain't very pleasant. But getting more on the front foot with it, and it is my level. would it be, can I word this without being shot down later? Would it be an advantage if you were able to be more proactive and get out there earlier, like as soon as the Herald or One News gets hold of it, it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
And I had guys working south of Waipu, and they said that afternoon, within 2 hours of that work getting out, there was cars with boats and trailers and caravans and it just went crazy. So
that's a big issue for Northfield. Yeah. So unfortunately, the powers to stop and send people home don't exist until the certificate is signed by the minister, and that's at 11:59. Yeah. And again, it's that when the MLH and the government decide to go to level 4, it's the lag between that decision and it coming into force. That's our risk for Northland, it really is, because we don't have the powers. We can push the envelope, but we don't want to put us in that position. It's just a simple matter of how they do that better. We've got a really challenging job when you think about it. They've got to make that decision based on the data. They've got to get the certificate signed to make it all legal for us to be able to turn. Word of mouth, reporting, media. I guess there's but that's something they're going to have to work at a very high level. And of course, they have to inform the public too. You have to give people time to get home, that sort of stuff, as opposed to our friends and cousins and TM who want to come up on a holiday for the next 4 weeks. So there's a range of issues that are really hard to find a middle. It needs to get better because that's what's sticking in everyone's mind from the last level 4 was the traffic punching out all when you come to our rural areas.
And just if I can swap back in and follow on from Jane with CitySafe, we realise there is a fund available, and CitySafe does cost us a lot of money, and any help that we might be able to get through that funding would be immense help to us. And we know it was increased markedly the other day, and I was just wondering whether you took the drumsticks with wicket wings.
Yeah, so we've got, I've opened some eyes to the Proceeds of Crime Fund, which we've got a joint application with the council. And I think the city staff are very much aware of that. It's there to be, there's a lot of money there. Everyone's involved in the crack codes. I can tell you about stuff that we've seen nationally from organised crime groups. There's a lot of money in that fund. And it's there for the public. It's not just for us. It's just to need some more funding. That's
Sorry, Marty, just one last question from mine, which was actually highlighted by Councillor Peters. The time frame that you were told about the level 4 lockdown to come in place, my understanding the ministers in Northland were all discussed the day beforehand, and our mayor was told half an hour before it went live. How quickly were you actually informed as for Northland?
So, our district commander gets, I can't give the exact time, but he obviously they'll work as soon as something like that breaks, as soon as a positive case, I would say at executive level, which includes district commanders, they will give heads up that we're liable to see some kind of midnight restriction. But the heads of those government departments have to get together again. But it's the power of act, and we won't get that until the certificate is signed at midnight. That's when it comes into effect. You can't just stop people from doing. Well, we can, but we can't say, what are you doing? How about going home? It's that lag. listeners about it, I would say late afternoon, when the drums started being heavily. Wouldn't be too much before that, but our district commander would have got a heads up.
Just makes it hard to be a police officer when you get that sort of notice, that's all.
Any further questions or feedback to Marty?
Just one question, so Murphy, just a brief one. Kia ora, Marty. The funding that was announced yesterday to develop the technical response units, will any of those resources come to Whangarei or what?
That's right.
Yeah, so the answer is, well, can I sit here with a smile on my face without giving you too much away? And hopefully the next meeting I can give you some details.
Thank you. Thank you, Marty. Really appreciate you taking the time to come and update us, and I think the comments reflect our gratitude to you and your team for what you're doing to keep us all safe, particularly with these COVID times. We have a recommendation that the council note the report. Can we move it for that? Councillor Reid is moving, Councillor Bobber seconding. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Brings us to item 7.2, the Lovers Lane Bridge Replacement Professional Services, page 38 of the agenda. Thank you, Sue. Just while you make the way up, Rob's got an announcement to make on.
Yeah, Councillor, it's through you, Madam Chair. Just to announce that Shelley Wharton, who's sitting quietly over there, has just been appointed to the board of Water New Zealand. For those of you who don't know, Water New Zealand is the industry body that deals with all the waters and things like that. So that's great. But also the people we use our benchmarking for. It's a really big honour.
Congratulations, Shelley. We expect great things. And we will get them.
Can I just ask, what does that mean for us?
It's a personal honour to Shelley, really, but it does mean that obviously the things that we do here will probably get national focus through Water News, but more national focus through here as well.
Yeah, okay. As in work-wise, how much of that time will be doing that? And, well, that's just as interesting.
I don't know what the requirements are, but I do know that Shelley gets through a lot of work. I don't think we'll suffer from it.
That's great. It's a governance role. So, Sue and Simon, do you want to give us a bit of background to this item before we move the recommendations?
Sure.
Thank you.
Through the chair, you're probably all familiar with the Lovers Lane Bridge, the bridge at the end of Lovers Lane behind the library. It is due to be renewed in the next few years. It seems prudent to do it now before we do, while we kind of have access with the civic building being constructed, and we propose to upgrade Capital Park over the next couple of years, so we would like to get in before those two projects are complete. It's a parks asset, so it will be renewed from the parks renewal funding. We wanted to build a bridge there that kind of reflected the civic building and its high-profile nature in the centre of the city. A budget of 1.6 million was used, which is based on other pedestrian bridges that we've built that have that high amenity value. The professional fees have been estimated to be 300,000. That was both based on the engineer's estimate and they've actually been to the market, and the ballpark for the tenders received were around that amount. So today we're just seeking feedback or seeking approval to pull some funding forward to start working on the bridge design. The 300,000 is, we'll do the topographical survey, the geotechnical report, concept design, and stakeholder workshops, preliminary design, then resource consents, detailed design, and building consent, and includes construction monitoring. So the whole project will be demolition of the old bridge, relocation of services, and there's gas and power lines through here, construction, lighting, and some cultural narrative. So seeking feedback on the report. Summarised it there.
Thank you, Sue. Councillor, any questions for Sue before we move the
Yes, I've
recommendation?
got a question.
Councillor Innes,
Second.
It hasn't been moved and seconded yet. I'm just covering off questions first.
The question, Sue or Simon, really relates to the benefit of undertaking it now. Just the detail of it. I think if you look at maybe resource consent, or are there any real strong benefits of undertaking it right now in terms of the civic centre rather than deferring it to later on? I'd just be interested to know what the saving would be.
Not so much savings, it's access. So to remove the bridge and do the work will require large machinery and access around the back of the library. If we've already done Catholic Park, which we propose to do the design next year and do the work the following year, we don't really want large machinery going through there, ripping the old bridge out, pulling it through behind the library. Won't be able to go up Lovers Lane. We would have built the civic centre. We won't be access there, so we're quite restricted as to how we get to it, and that impacts on some of the time.
And in terms of resource consent or cultural impact assessments, are there any advantages undertaken at the current time?
I would say we have some momentum with Hapu around good dialogue around the civic centre and what's happening there, and that will then morph into the work we'll do at Catholic Park, getting a cultural narrative around that and tying the two projects together.
Councillor Holmes, question?
Yeah, I just want to go down the bottom under discussion, number 4 on the agenda, and it says this bridge is not in our long-term plan. We just spent months and months putting a long-term plan together, and this bridge replacement is not in the long-term plan. So I find it a bit alarming that we've got so many projects underway, and we haven't got a financial. We've got a RUCU that we've got to have decisions made on. We've got the civic centre, whether we can stay within the budget. We've got this building, and we're sitting, all these ones here I just mentioned are still outside the long-term plan. And so we've got to take consideration about our finance. So I can understand what you're trying to do here, and it's a good process, but we're responsible for the budget here, guys. And at the moment, we've got all those other things to consider before we bring forward something 4 years out in the long-term plan. They're asking to bring this money 4 years out up to now. And we know that it's a major cost consideration we've got to consider in the next 2 months.
Through the chair, I think we've got about 8 million for parks renewals in the long-term plan, and it's funded from that.
Yeah, that's not bridge renewals. And the second,
all the assets are grouped up into that line. They're not broken down into individual assets. So the bridge is a parks asset. It will be being depreciated. Depreciation is going into that funding line. That's the funding line for replacing it.
what I'm reading here is there's no specific project for the bridge renewal and long-term plan. That's in the agenda. So
it's not specified in the long-term plan.
So it's a kind of package of works that's what we've been doing, haven't we? We've been doing packaging to include things that come up through the plan. So we'll leave it to debate. Any other question? Councillor Connacht's got a question, Councillor Deeming and Councillor Murphy.
Just initially for the recommendation we have, is that option 2 in the 2 options down below? It isn't quite word the same, I just want to clarify. Because in option 2 it says fund from the future LTP such as Y4. This means current work will continue including Catholic Park.
Yes, it is option 2.
That's option 2. Yeah, cool. And in saying and listening to the plans around redoing Catholic Park as well, how much larger would the cost be if we were to do it after Catholic Park had been upgraded? So obviously it would be redeveloped, whatever's happening with it. Well, would it be a lot would it be a much larger cost if we had to do it after the park was upgraded?
Through the chair, yes, it will cost more. Also, there'll be some design dilemmas when you come out of the end of Lovers Lane and you get to the bridge. It needs to be higher for the new flooding requirements. So you'll have us completing the Civic Centre building coming out at this height. We won't be able to get down into Catholic Park. Well, people with accessibility issues won't be able to get down into Catholic Park. So that whole little end of Lovers Lane has to be designed to cross the bridge and go down into Catholic. And it's quite a height difference. So delaying that means we have that design issue and accessibility to Catholic Park.
Thank you.
Councillor Deeming.
I think Sue has solved the comment I was going to make, thank you, which was simply that the bridge is part of the package. It isn't specified and no other bridges are specified either. It is part of the package, which was possibly not clear.
Councillor Murphy and Councillor Cochran.
Thanks, Sue. You went through a list of all the professional fees that it was going to cover, so I wrote them down, but I think I missed a couple. So there was the topo survey.
Yes.
The geotech
survey.
Yeah.
Concept design, and then we have stakeholder workshops. Then you come up with preliminary design, detailed design, resource consent, building consent, and construction monitoring is part of that. There's also a $40,000 contingency built into it.
And was the demolition included in that too?
That will come out of, it's a $1.6 million project, including the professional fees. So that the demolition will be part of the 1.6 as well.
Very good, thank you.
Councillor Cochran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the item's talking about $300,000 for professional services, and Councillor Murphy's highlighted different aspects of that. The question comes back to what was being raised previously by councillors. When we have a contractor such as Boss's Concrete, who builds bridges regularly and has stock standard designs for bridges, wouldn't it be more beneficial or cheaper in the long run to actually engage them now rather than after we've got professional services, because they could probably have done most of the work?
The professional service provider can work with the industry who they think is best placed to give us the most cost-effective design, such as us, and there's other providers that are similar.
Sorry, I'm missing my point there, Madam Chair. I'm just going to just explain what I'm actually asking. When we have a contractor in Whangarei who does the design and build all as one project, and the costs are vastly less than $300,000 for the professional services side, why wouldn't we go directly to them rather than employing a consultant to then go back to them?
Through the chair, the consultant you refer to will have the geotech expertise that we need, the engineering expertise, the structural engineering expertise, the resource management expertise, and the building consent expertise, which will all need to be wrapped around the actual company who delivers the structure.
So are you implying that the construction company which does this all the time doesn't actually have those skills?
I wouldn't be able to comment on what skills they've got or not.
They have the opportunity to put pricing for this project. So they could have done if they wanted to. The project's relatively complicated in this particular area. It's straightforward. But that contractor that you referred to could have put pricing.
And Madam Chair, on that respect, on what Simon has just said, will they be excluded because of the fact that they are a contractor, not actually a professional engineers?
Depends what skill base they bring to the table. As it stands at the moment, we've tendered this particular project, so we know what the prices are for the professional services work. So as already pointed out, we've got tenants in forwards.
Shirley, did you want to come forward and just add?
Through the chair, in this particular location, there's a lot of complexities around designing this bridge, largely because of the floodplain and the flood hazards that exist. So we need someone who can undertake some of the stormwater modelling type of exercises and make sure that the bridge is not going to be obstructing flood flows or causing flooding to other parts of the park and surrounding properties. There's also a lot of interactions with other projects, so the design needs to be carefully managed alongside a whole raft of other projects that are going on around there. So we do need somebody who can manage all of those things while providing us with a bridge that has some unique design features that are worthy of the space that it's going to occupy outside of the civic centre and the council chamber.
Will the staff, Madam Chair, I'll continue on that question, will the staff be using the standard tendering process, or will they be using other tendering processes that it will exclude local contractors from being able to bid for jobs?
The question is, are we following the procurement policy?
Can I say one more question?
And I'm getting some nods about procurement policy. Yes, good. I've got Councillor Peters, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that your idea of bringing this forward is a good one.
Question, Councillor Peters?
But my question is it possible in your unique design features to consider the name of the bridge? Yes. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Thanks. My question is just, I was just surprised to learn we've already tendered before we've approved the funding to do the work. So I'm just wondering what...
Through the chair, a lot of our projects are moving forward as they have momentum, and then I understand the protocol is we come here and ask for budgets to be pulled forward. And I've been here a couple of times to pull forward budgets because during the annual plan process we pushed it out and had certain caps, but projects that we work on, and I understand you don't want projects that aren't going to be completed, but when there are projects that can be completed, come to council and ask for budgets to be pulled forward.
Yeah,
we need to get a realistic number of what we pull forward, and sometimes going to the market is the way to make sure we're asking for the correct amount of money.
No, I can understand that. That's good. I guess my thinking was just, so what if the council did turn it down today? Would you then just go back to the replacement budget for the benches and tables and use that? How would, or would you just put a stop to it?
Seriously about what projects we have to give up, yes. But in this case, we actually have a timing issue and we wanted to complete it around the time of the civic centre.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I was just surprised that we've already tendered before this has come. Anyway, thank you.
I think you just want to add.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillors, this is a consequence of your desire for us to spend our whole capital budget every year. So what you told us to do was to line stuff up as much as we could so that we could get the whole capital budget done. Sometimes that does result in these sorts of things, but I suppose the key thing is that if it's declined, then we can turn it off. I think we can say no tenders accepted in this case. So it is awkward, but it's one of the tactics that we've used to go from getting 70-80% of our capital works to over 90%.
Councillors, any further questions?
One question.
House question?
The professional services on this contract is 22%. Now, on construction things, you're normally around about 15%. On buildings, simple buildings, is around about 5 or 6%. So we're paying a premium to get what we already know and what we want. So, I find it disappointing we haven't got the ability to actually just go to someone and say, this is what we want as a bridge.
The
question is, why is our professional services so high? It's 22%. compared to other contracts?
The only comment I can give you is we went to the market, we specified quite clearly what we wanted. There were 4 tenders received, and this was not the lowest, because it wasn't a lowest price conforming, but it wasn't far off the lowest price received.
Councillors, I'm going to move the recommendation that the Whangarei District Council approves bringing forward 300,000 from year 4 of the 2021-2031 long-term plan funded from Neighbourhood and Public Garden Renewals 00010 to fund the Lovers Lane Bridge replacement professional services, and Councillor Murphy is seconding. Councillors, thank you for all the questions of clarification. I think this is actually a really signature project that it's bringing into sharp focus the fact that we are building a civic centre. You'll recall, I'm sure, what was the little freezer that went down underneath the Whangarei through the July 2020 floods, underneath that bridge, in fact, it captured it. You'll recall also, hopefully if you've been over it, the undermining of the abutments of that existing bridge. It absolutely is time for it to be replaced. And while we are doing this work, upgrading the Lovers Lane, we're connecting with the cycleways. It absolutely links through the Carmel shared path to the Romana shared path. It's got the potential to be, hopefully within the budget that we have, we can do something that's pretty special for that location, because it's well used already. And it was discussed about the changing levels, clearly with the work that we're doing around flood mitigation, climate change, taking into account all of those impacts. The professional services need to really dig into that. So this is the timing is really important. And I'm glad that we've had the discussion around how it's going to look, whether or not it is just going to be a little concrete bridge, but clearly that's probably not the best option in this scenario.
Thank you. Through the chair, there are 2 reasons that I absolutely support this. One is that, like in our last agenda item with the growth strategy, we were talking about the issues that our community is facing. One of those is around congestion, so I will always support more budget going into our walking and cycling network. That's just an absolute tick for me. The other thing I wanted to say is, and this comes back to our other thing we were talking about at risk of audit, which was around, our decisions around our procurement policy, and I strongly believe it's always going to cost local government more, and that's because we have to be leaders and we have to make sure we do our procurement properly, and that's taking into things that count, like whole of life, quality, sustainability, social procurement. So all of those things are really important. We have to remember that council does have to follow certain procurement processes. We can't just go out to one contractor. Anyway, really exciting. So I look forward to getting on with it, because I think the timing absolutely does make sense if we can do this simultaneously with the redesign or the refurbishment of Capital Park and also the Civic Centre project. So it's very good. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Cooper? Councillor Bean?
Thank you very much. I think there's been some really, I'd like to support Councillor Hulse and some of the points that he's raised, because we have just gone for a long-term plan. This building of the Civic Centre has been well known for a long time, as has by the sound of it, the upgrade of Capital Park. And so now we find ourselves having to bring forward money, albeit out of the budget that is in there, and the expense of it, of 300,000 to pick up on Councillor Cockerillo's point, really does worry me. And I understand the timing requirements, I do. But as a council, we continue to, through our procurement, it seems, pursue option or get ourselves into situations where we are spending so much money when it would appear, and it seems that we hear of examples, and I'm interested, Sue, that you say that you based the budget on other pedestrian bridges that are out there. Because, there seems to be examples, unless we're hearing false information, we don't know what cheaper. And so I'm sort of, at some point, and we did talk about it in the Risk and Audit Committee, at the meeting the other day, we really do need to look at ways of doing things. And so, I'm not 100% happy. I understand your reasoning, but I do support Councillor Holz's concern.
Councillor Cooper, Councillor Benny.
Just a question for Sue. So the other bridge in Capital Park, is there any plans to do anything with that bridge?
When we do the upgrade of Capital Park, yes, we'll have to change the balustrades so that that can be a cycle bridge. They need to be higher, so that we won't be widening that though. So there's been quite a bit of discussion about just which route people will go to doing around Whanau Park, and it seems a nice link to come down the Carmo Shed path, past the library and the new building and through to 2nd Ave and off. But we expect when people come back into town, they might come up 1st Ave, just because the way the roads are. So we will make that compliant for cycling across.
Yeah, and that links to is that, so it would seem more likely to be the other bridge. That was sort of the question, but yeah.
Yes, they've been working on it. They both avenues will work, and then you cross back over to Beresford Street and that bridge. And we could make 2nd Ave the preferred option, and they are, but we know just the way people are, they might, if they're going into the city centre and not the library, move off towards the left a bit and go along 1st Ave. If they're going to the library, I expect they'll shoot up 2nd Ave.
Councillor Hobbs.
Yes, thank you, Worship. You've talked about, everyone's asked a few questions now, so I'm going to move a procedural motion that this matter lie on the table till after the decision on council funding of Ruku and the civic centre, and the cost of upgrading this building is known to councillors. So the motion lies on the table till the November meeting.
Is there a seconder for that procedural motion?
I'll second that.
So Whangarei seconded. A procedural motion requires that I put that motion. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
It's lost. Any further discussion?
Okay, I'll speak to the motion now.
Councillor Hobbs.
Okay, I just want to remind the councillors, we've had our CEO come in here and say to us, you've set a budget, we're going to have some cost overruns, we're going to have some growth spurts, and we're going to have to fund those and just controlling spending. Here we are, within 3 weeks of that message from our CEO, we're bringing a project forward, funding forward from 4 years out to fund it. Of course it's a good project. I've funded these ones. I've been a great supporter of doing projects, one of them, Pariona, bringing the money forward. But that is before we had a Ruku, the civic centre building going up, and we know we're going to have to watch the budget on that one, and the cost of replacement of this building. What's going to happen to that? We all know that's multi-million, and here you are, straight after our CEO advised you all that we were in a position to watch the finances. I find the situation quite alarming that if this goes through, the council can do that. When we've just been through a long-term plan, all of you people signed it off, all the council signed the long-term plan off. So within 3 months, we're breaking all the rules of what we've said there. And then we're going against the advice of a recent upgrade from our CEO. Unbelievable.
Councillor Hobbs. Any further discussion? Councillor Dean.
Thank Councillor Ernest, please.
Thank you.
Okay, right, thank you. I'm really excited about the opportunity to get Catherine's Park back to what it was when I was a kid. The whole of Whangarei pretty much used to live in there in the summer. It was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it. The The bridge obviously has to be replaced. In my view, it's completely false economy to wait until after we've done all the other projects and then go back and redo the bridge. That's exactly what our community are constantly telling us that they see us doing. We seal a road and then we probably dig it up to replace drainage or whatever. It's pretty obvious that this bridge has to be replaced. We've got and it's going to be tricky. We've got various power lines and pipelines and bits and pieces underneath it that are going to be difficult to manage anyway, even with the access as it is at the moment. Put a great big building beside it, put a few other things, make the park look nice, and then it's going to be virtually impossible to get the structure that we would all want to have in what I hope is going to be another iconic park in our district. I think that's a fantastic opportunity to anchor this end of town. You've then got a really fabulous park this end, you've got the wonderful one at the town basin. You're actually encompassing our city centre with pleasant places for people to be. I think possibly the wording has raised a misconception that the money is not in the long-term plan. Clearly it is in the long-term plan. It's not specified for this bridge in particular or any other bridge that actually needs to be in the work stream. And the staff have the work stream. I actually think it's I feel quite embarrassed that we have staff with the expertise, the knowledge, and having been told by council to get these projects sorted, bring forward projects when they need to be, defer projects that can't be done at the moment. As our Chief Executive just described, it's exactly what we asked for, to have projects brought forward when it's economically viable and sensible and logical to do that, which this is. Our staff go out and get the figures that are needed in order for us to make a reasonable judgment on the project, and then we tell them that they shouldn't have done that. Well, what are they supposed to do? Honestly, guys.
Point orders. No one has mentioned that the bridge shouldn't be replaced. So Councillor Dean does concentrate. No one said it.
Didn't say that it shouldn't be? No, I don't think Councillor Dean said that anybody did say it shouldn't be replaced. I didn't. I haven't even mentioned the bridge being replaced. But since you mentioned it, obviously it has to be replaced. We can't continue on with the bridge where the abutments are being undermined, where the bridge is clearly, well, God only knows when it was first built, but I don't imagine that it was to the engineering standards that are required today. So, I just think that the staff have done exactly what we asked them to do. And now we sit in judgment and say, well, actually, no, we're not that happy about that after all. Well, I am very happy about it, and I'm very happy with the way the staff have gone about the project, and I hope that council will find itself able to support it. Councillor Dean?
Yeah.
Councillor Innes?
Thank you, Bishop. Just to follow on from Councillor Deming, I feel that we've gone out to market. We've got a good feeling for price. I then look at the timing issue and the questions that were answered. I think we've got the Civic Centre, the blue-green. I think with the blue-green network, I think it's something that we look towards sustainability in that. And part of that relates to stormwater as well as access. So I think design is crucially important. There's Catholic Park, and then looking at the collective savings. But the other point I would like to come back to really is sense of place. I think that's crucially important. And I look towards the Civic Centre and the relationship with the Civic Centre. I've never seen the Civic Centre as an administration building. And an integral part of the Civic Centre is dealing with landscaping and dealing with good design. Otherwise, we end up with an administration building rather than a civic centre. So I feel that the efficiencies seem to be there through the integration. seems to make a lot of sense. And I think with a long-term plan, part of the approach that we've taken is to look at programs. And the idea of having programs was to give us a level of flexibility. To have projects, as we used to have in the long-term plan, too rigid. And we saw that having programs gave us that level of flexibility. And I feel comfortable with that. And so I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Ennis. Councillor Cutforth.
I move for the motion be put.
It's a procedural motion. Is that seconded?
Okay.
Councillor Peters and Councillor Reid. Procedural motion that the motion be put. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I will put the motion.
Division, please.
Councillor Hulse has called for a division. So those in favour of the recommendation, please hold your hands.
Councillors Murphy, Connor, Cutforth, Peters, Reid, Innes, Deeming, and Her Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillors Benny, Cooper, Golightly, and Hulse and Cockerill.
It's carried. Councillors, we've now been here for 2 hours. We will adjourn for let's make it a 20-minute break. Please be back for 11:20. Minutes again. 3, Contract 17001, the Parks Maintenance Contract Extension. Just to, there was an adding error, so the recommendation should read that Council approves the value of CON 17001 Parks Maintenance being increased by $2,364,556 excluding GST, from $8,444,407 to $10,000,000, just need to write this down, $808,963. So there's just a slight amendment in that number, excluding GST, to extend the contract from the 1st of August 2021 to the 31st of July 2022, as provided for in the contract. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? I'll move. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Golightly's keen to second that. Councillor Murphy. Thank you.
I just want to mention, just as for interest, I mean, my previous employer was Recreational Services, so just...
Thank you. You're noting a former interest. I don't think you need to continue noting that as an interest because you're no longer with them. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess just briefly I'd just say, like I mentioned in our previous item, we manage nearly 10,000 hectares of parks and reserves and gardens, so it's a significant area of land. And I think our contractors do a brilliant job. Obviously over lockdown I was looking around our reserves out in Whangarei because none of them are mowed and the grass has been growing. It's all well overdue, but I think this is just... I mean, our community values our parks and reserves greatly, and so this is the cost to service them and maintain them and look after them, then that's a key council responsibility.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Golightly.
Just a question also. With the increase, I don't know whether it's just me, but I just want to look at 11 million, that it's quite a significant amount of money.
That's it, through the chair, when we do an extension here, we extend the original value of the contract, so we show the whole 5-year value. But I'm actually only extending 1 year, it is the last year of the 5 years.
So it's extending 2.5 for a year.
Yes, 2 or 3.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. The other thing is that recreational services, do they employ local contractors?
They employ staff. They have very few subcontractors. They directly employ and invest in staff.
Local. And the other question I sort of wanted to know was what's the scope of their work? Is it just literally parks that they're doing?
It will be parks, gardens. There's some areas of open space that are actually parks, like around the Forum North here. They do some boat cleaning, boat ramp cleaning, minor tree repairs, cleaning the hard surfaces, replacing some footpaths, repairs, anything in the park they'd be responsible for, almost the whole of life. They also provide custodian down at the town basin and do one toilet down at the town basin, which is a little bit outside the rest of the scope of works, because generally toilets are in a different contract. Originally the town basin was always put in as one whole park, so all services could be maintained by one contractor, so that's a bit unusual from here. They don't do our main tracks, they don't do our street trees, they don't do playgrounds, those are separate contracts. They don't do our coastal structures, main ones that are out right on the coast, so we're doing on the coast and the contracts. So that's typically the scope.
Councillor Corporal.
So the recreation business also do picking up, cleaning up the rubbish bins, don't they?
That's a separate contract. Yes, they do get a contract. The custodian service is another contract, completely separate.
And you said that they do minor tree repairs, but that's not on road reserves. That's
right.
Okay.
So within a park, If it's not a large tree that needs an arborist, but a small tree that we might want to crown lift in a car park. I know they did some work at Oceans Beach in that car park there, just lifted the bottom branches for a bit of safety in that car park. Direct services would do that.
And the footpaths that you talk about are inside the parks, aren't they?
Yes.
So they're not the ones on the road?
That's correct.
Any further discussion? So can I just check, it talks about the contract was from the 1st of August 2019, I'm presuming that was 2017, because the first 3 plus 1 plus 1. It's all right, we've got numbers, I suppose. So this contract did commence in 2017?
Just before I started work here. And
3 years?
On the tender evaluation, I tell you, from Club.
So the initial contract was 3 years, we've added 1 year, and this is the final extension of 3 plus 1 plus 1. And over those 5 years, the total sum will be about 10.8 million.
And through the chair, we're just calling for expressions of interest now to go back out to the market, so that we'll be ready for this when it expires next year.
Excellent.
That'll be tomorrow, going out to the market.
Excellent. Councillor Cutforth in Hulse.
Just so I'm clear, so the 2.364 is for an additional year. Am I right? That's all it's for. It's not. We're not increasing the contract. It's
not extending it to or anything. No.
We are taking up the option of the 1 plus 1 plus 1.
Yeah. So it's not an increase in the contract. It's an extension of the contract.
It's a permitted extension of the contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. And part of that is because of things like the Whangarei and the Town Basin Park and Koyola and Labour. Is that
we've done a bit of a guesstimate as to what those variations will be. They're not completed, and we've guesstimated where they will kick in. We've estimated Town Basin will be around December, and Pookie Island will be around April. So there could be a little slide there of a month before the contractor takes over. So the maintenance contractor, the building contractor might have that for a bit longer, depending where they are doing the Town Basin project.
I am confused, so let's start again. So we're increasing it by 2.364 million.
Yes.
Because we're adding the year, if you like.
Yes.
That's the year. But the 2.241 contract value extension is within that. On top of that.
Where's your 2.241?
In the discussion, the contract value extension has been calculated at 2.241125.
Through the chair, yes, that's my advance that Your Worship pointed out.
Oh, so that's that is the 2.364.
Yes, I need around 2.3 million to carry on maintaining parks and gardens. It's kind of a base rate of around 178,504 per month I spend, and I have day works of discretionary things are around 7,000, and then I've had to guess for some future variations. So
don't confuse me any further. So just so I'm clear,
yes.
the money that we're putting in is for another year of the contract, and that year of the contract includes things like the Whangarei building, roof gardens, the Town Basin Park, the Koyola as well. Which are, and what I needed to check is, are those new things, or are you just giving us a bit of an idea of what?
They are new things that haven't got an accurate variation because they're not complete. But within that year, I will be taking over them. So I've had to do a guesstimate, because I don't want to come back to the council in May next year going, I've run out of money in my contract, I need X amount more. If I don't need all of that money because projects slip a little bit, it's a measured value contract, so I won't use the money.
So that's the 2.364. Okay. So I guess my question then, now that I'm slightly clearer, were we expecting, for example, to take over the maintenance of the Whangarei building roof gardens? Because
There's the original lease agreement that was negotiated well before my time.
So that and the other things are additional costs within this contract that you've incorporated into 2.364 years. Okay, I'll stop there. Oh, and if we're into numbers, there's 31 days in July.
Councillor Hobbs and Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. My query to Sue is, when we first discussed this contract some months ago, I asked you if you've been talking to the Whangarei Museum about trying to get some kind of a memorandum of understanding of that Hunter roof, because they're a CCR of our council, and there's certainly an area for conflict if one person's got a different view from what the council's got. Has that been able to be met?
We haven't made a lot of further progress on the discussions about the roof for various reasons. They would have come up when I put the lease extension report up, where we're going to extend the footprint of the Whangarei building. Yes, we will continue those negotiations. They involve our current contractor, having something that they can price and give to us to look at. So
Just an area of conflict that we don't want, we don't need, we don't want, so we can just wrap that up really good.
Councillor Hobbs. Councillor Peters.
My question is also around the roof, because I've had a lot of inquiries about it. I'm just asking if we are maintaining it as council, will that be available to all citizens to get up on that roof, or will that be exclusive to people that have paid to get into the room?
I'm sorry, I don't have the information to answer that question. I do know that council will be responsible to maintain it, but access I'm not aware of where that landed.
Is there any...
I assume the trust would be better.
Councillor Cooper is council's representative on the trust. If you want to respond.
Thank you. My understanding is that it will be able to
Absolutely cool.
Have you been attending the meetings, Councillor? My understanding is that the access to the roof is part of the admission price that people pay to be able to access the Whangarei Art gallery and roof. So it's not for public access at all times. And I'll have words with Councillor Cooper after the meeting. Listen.
So, supplementary question, I'm not sure to Sue, is that possible to be part of negotiations?
Point of order, Mr. Madam Chair, because Councillor Peters going to get me more.
She already has. Sorry. Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Bishop. It was just related to the key performances. So you go through the process of performance assessment of the contract, and based on that you're recommending.
Councillor Clark.
One question I have, obviously with the new parks and playgrounds and things coming in the near future, how large of a gap is there between the next contract starting and this one, the extension? Because with the contract we have, it is just the extension, but there's going to be a lot more work for people to be doing. So for the staff to actually be covering these areas, whereas I can understand the point you've said about the reasoning before to judge it, but has there been any extra funding within this number to account for the beginning of the new projects?
Within this number is estimated variations to take over the new town basin and Hawkeye Island. Yes, and some other variations. It's actually really complicated, but there's some other land at Waipu that less than us pretty soon. Yes, so we've done estimates, and there's no gap between this contract and the next contract. This one will expire, and we'll be running a tender evaluation process. So So we have a contractor appointed 3 months before this expires. So if it's a new contractor, they have time to mobilise and get in.
Just one other question, just for how long has Recreational Services held the contract up until this time? Do you have that?
No, but they had it before this period, and I can assume it was a 5-year contract. I'm not really aware of the details, so we're getting close to at least 10 years, if not more.
There were lots of different contracts when I had them, and they got rolled into the one maintenance contract. It used to be high profile parks, Kefla Park, Laurie Park, they're all separate. Oh, how times have changed.
That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Cutforth?
Just a question.
Yes.
Your Worship. Sorry, I'm going to prolong the complete evening soon, but if the Whangarei roof garden is not open to the public, why would our council contract be paying for its maintenance?
Through the Chair, there is an agreement in the lease document that was signed by this council quite some time ago.
So what is the agreement in the lease
document? It says our council will maintain the roof. So it must have been quite clear early on that that was going to happen.
Something that maybe a level of detail that was not clear to council.
It was raised at the time.
Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Oh, Councillor Murphy, you're allowed to comply.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a mention, actually, I suppose it's a question really. So the new contract, I mean, obviously I'm a big supporter. I know recreational services are doing as much as they can, or they're making some environmental leeway. And I know that in the town basin area we don't use any glyphosate or sprays. But I'm just wondering if the new contract going forward, is council going to have an opportunity to discuss aspects of those such matters?
We hadn't planned to bring that, but we had heard several things you've said over time. We have a requirement to keep glyphosate down. We've asked in the tender document will be explain how it will be more sustainable, what value are you going to bring to this contract. So we have some questions around that, so that a new contractor might bring something that the current contractor doesn't. Yes, so in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, and I guess it's just thinking about minimising risk, especially for our young people, taking the precautionary principle. I know in Auckland they actually have a map which tells you which are the parks and reserves which chemicals are used in and which are the parks and playgrounds where chemicals are not used. So I think it's definitely something we need to have more discussion about going forward. That's my opinion. Thank you.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 8.1, the financial report for the 2 months ending 31st of August 2021. The recommendation is the council notes the external debt position and treasury report as of the 31st of August. Thank you, Ellen. Have a move for that recommendation. Councillor Deeming and a seconder. Councillor Golightly. Hey, welcome up. We won't get me or Councillor Councillor I don't think there is anything much I need to be saying about this. It's fairly straightforward and business as usual to me. I think we've seen the highlights of the report for the usual clarity. And I look forward to anything that Mr. Edward may have tell us who wishes to follow. So, councillors, any other comments or questions for Councillor Murphy?
Thank you. Through the chair, so there was the comment about the 600 ratepayers that were unable to pay. Half have contacted us and some have been able to pay. I was just wondering if there's any update on that since this report was written. If any more of those have been able to
Yes, through the chair, we work currently with a lot of ratepayers. We delayed the normal letters get out with the vendors because of the situation. You know, recall that when we were in the lockdown, it was over the rates payment period, so the people who normally come to pay at the counter couldn't. Now, that was partly exacerbated by the fact that the checks are not available. We don't anticipate people coming and paying either cash or by credit card transaction at the counter. So we know a great number couldn't do that, so we identified through our computer system, we could identify people the way they paid last year. So we could appropriately contact people who had paid over the counter and try to contact them directly. We've also seen a different letter previously. The first day that we received payment, we had 142 people contact us to make other arrangements to pay the rates. That's good. So these numbers have come down considerably since April.
That's good. That's good that we can be proactive like that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Hobbs.
Yes, we've got a couple of questions for Alan there that's going to come up. In our Treasury report at page 46, and this is all based on information we've been given last week. On page 46, it shows our external net debt is $124 million. And obviously our total debt is 172, and you take away our internal cash in the whole, that reduces down our external debt to 124. So is that pretty accurate? Okay. So through our local funding agency report we got last week's meeting, it says drawn down in 2021, we've got a short-term loan of $10 million and loans $162 million of external debt. So there's $30 million different between this report we received last week and where we actually borrowed money from what we've got on our agenda. $30 million. So I'd like an explanation how which one's wrong, or what's the anomaly there?
Through the chair, LGR is reporting on the gross debt. The 124 is the net debt, taking account of cash and gold.
Okay, because we lifted that $20 million from last year.
I don't know the numbers you're referring to.
Yes, 142 million last year, it's gone up to 162 million from the local government, so that's the money we're drawing down. And it doesn't correspond with our graph on page 46.
So the in the LG faithful week is 30th of June, whereas this is 31st of August. There's a time difference there. Yeah. Well, there are some numbers that say directly what the difference is between the two. The fundamental issue is that if you compare the eligibility figures of the gross debt we have, they take no account of cash we hold to show a PPE position.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 8.2, the Whangarei District Council 2021 credit rating update. The recommendation is that the Council receives the updated 2021 Standard & Poor's Global Ratings credit rating report and notes its contents. Shame that the recommendation didn't include the fact that we're still AA+. They're reduced to negative. I'll move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reid is seconding. Councillors, it was interesting with the Standard & Poor's credit rating. Over the years, I've kind of kept copies of the Standard & Poor's because they are a pretty credible agency in looking at and I believe we started getting credit rating from 2012. So we're now, a number of years of information, and it's really interesting just reading the narrative. One of the common things that have come through is this council's financial management practices, and I think that's something that I'm personally really proud of. That they recognise it as well. You'll see in their reports the key statistics that they look at each year and their narrative, and of course probably the reason why the negative outlook is, my understanding is because of our ambitious capital program. They will assume that we can achieve that ambitious capital program, and the chances of that possibly a little slim, but if we can get 80% that we've been achieving in previous years, it's always a good aspect. So they're, again, as I say, they can't put us any higher than the Crown. And we are as high as the Crown. And you'll see on page 54 of our agenda the ratings that they give for the rating factors, the institutional framework, our economy, financial management, budgetary performance, liquidity, debt burden, standalone credit profile, and the issuer credit rating. So there are a number of things, and they're consistent in the way that they analyse and check all of our systems and processes around our finances. So it's pretty cool that we're still up there, but the negative watch is something to be aware of, and I think that indicates that the likelihood in the next 3 years that we could be downgraded that's why we're on the negative watch. That's a problem.
Through you, Madam Chair, just for clarification purposes, at the moment we are definitely AA plus, and this will be reviewed in another year's time or 6 months' time.
In the annual
Through the Chair, the reviews are annually, but also done if there are any other limited events that take place which they watch, either nationally or locally. Because, as we have said, our rating is kept by the Crowns. Should there be a change in the Crown's rating, ours will be adjusted immediately, as it was last year, when the Crowns was AA plus, our automatically was already high. They have taken a fair conservative view of the national economy post-COVID. That's one of the factors which has, we scored 3 points and low is good, 1 better than 3. So that would be upwards pressure on us. We could expect the state to potentially upgrade their view of the national economy. That's offset by the refinery moving to the import terminal, which is a contract manufacturing report. While it's factored in, any further information about that will trigger that. They also are watching what happens with the proposed LPG agreement. They've already signalled unofficially the immediate downgrade of that extra debt burden is placed on council if we proceed with that. So that's outside the annual review process.
So just to clarify, if the government is rated as in 6 months' time as a AA minus, then we will get downgraded to a AA minus anyway because we cannot be higher than the government. Is that correct?
The next step for the government would be to come back to the AA, not AA minus.
Okay, sorry. Yes. So, but if the government was reduced, we would automatically be reduced as well. Yes.
And they are on state rate year on year ago. So that's signalling we actually, they rate us lower than the government now.
I have other questions, but I'm going to leave it at that point because I know the rabbit hole I might go down.
So any other, Councillor Cooper?
Just to pick up a point that Ellen said just then, talk about the long-term plan amendment. And you're saying that they're watching that, and if we take on that debt, then things will go down. Is it just that debt, or if we take on any other debt that currently is unbudgeted? So, for instance, if the service indicated over budget, would that have the same effect?
It's about the amount of additional debt.
Yeah, that we don't know any particular project. Right.
So they will go with a certain amount of contingency, and they know we have the ability to manage that through, in their words, deferring or rescheduling our program, which we always have done. What they're saying is we are effectively hard coding another big project if we go to Belgium.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cutforth, did you hear?
I was just looking at page 51 where, down the bottom last paragraph where they're just commenting on our rates revenue that it will be going up by what they say are larger than usual 7% before annual rises 7 at 4.5, and just really for councillors to think about if in fact we do take on any other larger projects, it's absolutely inevitable that those figures in terms of rates increases will have to increase, and that will. When you see start figures like are larger than usual 7%, and you think you might be adding another 4, 5, or 6% on top of that, it does rather bring things home to rest a wee bit. So yeah, that was just a comment.
Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Richard. Just following on from Councillor Cutford, Alan, it's really where we sit relative to others, and I know that I've raised this with you before. So we've got an ambitious capital work program, and one would expect that with the council, with the level of growth we've got. And it seems to me that part of this, we can't consider it in isolation. I think we need to be looking at it in terms of the growth that's happening within New Zealand and those councils that are taking on these, taking on the debt to really deal with the growth and look at it in a more proactive way. So, have you got any information, or can you supply information in time that would give us that relativity? Because it's not within the Standard & Poor's report.
Through the Chair, the quantum of the capital works is not the only factor here. It's an important one. There's a balance between how you're funding that through debt and how you're funding it through rates.
Yeah.
So, depending on where your current debt sits, if you have more projects which are debt funded, without increasing the ability to repay that debt, your credit rating goes down. And that's the position we're in. We have had a relatively stable increment in our rates and our capital works over the past few years. In fact, our rates probably have gone slightly higher than our debt, which has been seeing our credit rating incrementally increase year on year to the AA+ speed. In the WP, we took a quite significant increase in CapEx, and really the rates increase was a catch-up because of COVID last year. So we've got a bit out of balance, which put negative pressure on the credit rating. Other councils have been in the position for a long time, and they've seen their credit ratings starting to decline. So by comparison with growth councils, Carolina sits at A+, and have gone down from AA- recently. What else? We have Queenstown with AA-. Hamilton's AA-. So they're again seeing those pressures coming through there. Western Bay of PG's AA as does Auckland. But conversely, the likes of Selwyn, which has had massive growth post-earthquakes, AA+. So it's not just about CapEx, it's a factor, but it's also about if you look at your whole funding base, at the same time you put projects up there.
Thank you. It's good to put it in context. That helps. Thank you.
Again, through the Chair, Ellen, on page 52, it talks about the three waters and the effect that the three waters may have. If the government was to mandate the three water approach and to take away the waters, would that instantly put us into a negative rating?
Yes, I believe it would, for the simple reason that our water assets aren't leveraged anyway. So what would happen if the water assets are taken away from council's balance sheet? More importantly, the revenue we get from the water, which is currently going to service our debt. We've now got the same debt with a lower revenue base. So clearly from our ability to repay debt, that puts us in a weak position. We get the credit rating downgrade immediately based on that.
And the negative rating on council would mean that our interest rates for our loans would go up. Is that correct?
Chair, if we go from AA+ to AA, that wouldn't happen because there's no differential. Anything below that, every increment down is another 5 basis points in additional cost. 0.75%.
So in summary, through you, Madam Chair, this government, if it wanted to, could cripple any council in the country.
Councillor Cooper?
Another question. If the three waters go, and we're losing income on the water, which is currently going to pay debt would still have to be serviced. Rating would go down. How much money would, where would that money come? And if it came from rates, what would the increase be?
Well, the current proposals, which are yet to be finalised, the government has a no worse off component, and they're offering compensation to cover that. We're still, in terms of now, we'll see the council at some sort of meeting, shall we believe that money is still inadequate to compensate us? But that's how the government are proposing to deal with issues.
And may not be quite as big as suggested.
Any further discussion on the ratings report? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And that brings us to the end of the open portion of our agenda. We do have some items in the confidential portion, so can I have somebody who is into confidential? Councillor Conroy's moving, Councillor Lynn is seconding. Those in favour, aye. Against? Carried. Let's take a brief break.